Max Gelman, encountered the killer and somehow managed to survive the weekend. It's hard for me to say that I'm a survivor. For kids died. For kids under the age of 12 went away to sleepaway camp with the hopes of meeting new friends, and they never came home. Now I get to walk around claiming that I survived something, mostly by hiding. I have never told my story. Until now. Truthfully, it has been therapeutic to do so. More therapeutic than the years of group therapy and medication. So if my grammar isn't perfect, or my writing is shit, I apologize, and thank you for the opportunity alone. It helps to be heard. Here we go. I hated sleepaway camp. I hated it when my mother made me attend from ages 13 to 15. I hated it when she insisted I get a job there at 16. I hated the bratty kids. I hated the dark woods. I hated the smells. I hated being expected to socialize for the vast majority of the day. I hated pretty much every single thing about the entire experience. But I didn't hate the fact that my father promised to buy me a car if I went. It would not be a great car, mind you, we weren't rich. It actually ended up being a used Honda POS from a decade prior. The windows were locked closed. The air conditioner didn't work. It had a distinct smell of onions for some reason, but hey, wheels were wheels. They might as well have been wings at that point. And so I agreed to their demands begrudgingly, with the promise of my first solo road trip set in my sights. I left for Hartshorn Park sometime around 8 on a dreary May morning. The drive took me from the New Jersey coastline to the barren and empty woods of central Pennsylvania. It rained throughout the whole trip, but I still enjoyed every minute of it. I stopped and picked up smokes and snacks along the way. I sang along to all my favorite CDs. I called into a couple sports radio stations like my dad always did. Before I knew it, I arrived after 5 to the worst mistake in my life. Hartshorn sat in a loosely populated county smack dab in the middle of nowhere. 20 miles of trees surrounded the campgrounds on every side. The park itself offered 2 freshwater lakes, 2 different playgrounds, and 9 different cabins. It was beautiful. I can still say that. Even now, I was late to the party. So late, in fact, that as soon as I pulled into the parking lot, I caught a group of kids my age already gathered by Lake Owanta. I suddenly remembered being told that counselors were instructed to show up at 3 for orientation. Panic crept in as the potential for being singled out rose exponentially. Great. From the center of the gaggle sprinted a particularly annoying 23-year-old named Adam. I recognized him from years prior and groaned audibly. Adam was always the overachieving type. The new job as camp lead fit him well. The lanky jerk jokingly jumped in front of my car while I slammed the squealing brakes and cursed under my breath. "Let's go, Gelman. Late to the first day of work." "Great start, kid, great start." Not a promising sign. He tapped on the glass annoyingly as I collected myself and discreetly tried to hide the pack of cigarettes sitting on my passenger seat. "Let's go, layman. Are you smoking? You're underage, kid, by a long shot. You shouldn't be smoking. Who bought you those? HM? You won't be smoking on my watch. Toss him. Get up and toss him in the garbage can right now." I cut the ignition lazily and lifted myself out of the driver's side. I grabbed my backpack from the back while Adam turned on the heel of his flawless tan boots and marched back towards the group. Then he paused and looked back again at me. "I'm serious about the cigs, Gelman. Toss 'em. Those things will give you cancer, kid." I pulled the half-full pack of Marlboro menthols from my pocket and deposited them dramatically inside the metal-covered can. Adam nodded approvingly and walked away. I stared into the bin a little longer, marking their position underneath the candy wrapper, while Adam returned to the curious group of counselors. After my brief hesitation, I followed his lead and fell in line with a small, friendly-looking brunette around my age. "All right, shitbirds. Some of you have been here before as campers and know what to expect, asterisk." He began in his best attempt at intimidation. "The next 2 weeks will be pure and unfiltered hell." A couple of the other nerdy counselors, cronies of Adam, chuckled emphatically from the front. "Some of you might not make it through the 14 days. Some of you won't have the stuff." A meathead of a kid turned around to point at me in the back and grabbed his nuts. "Ain't nobody want that, Jared?" I mumbled in return. The brunette laughed. I took pride in that. Cute, Helinski. Now, if you read the email, you'll know that we're also understaffed this month. Adam continued. Email? I muttered inquisitively to my new friend. Welcome to the new millennium, Max. She giggled while pointing to the name tag fastened neatly to her red tank top. Meredith, by the way. Adam cleared his voice. Because we are understaffed, we will be expected to perform double the duties. That means each of you will take a cabin on your own. Each of you will be expected to run an activity during the day. There is no hand-holding this week, folks. We can't afford it. Couple people groaned. I know it sucks, guys, but there's only 8 of us. This place usually functions best on 12 to 14. But there's nothing else we can do. He paused. Any questions? Meredith raised her hand and asked her question innocently. Where do we sleep tonight? My face flushed red. For some reason, so did Adam's. Best to get yourself set up in the cabin before the kids arrive. We sleep alone, tonight, folks. More groans. All right, well, I have some icebreakers to get us through the last couple hours of daylight. Then I figured we could tell some scary stories by the fire. Who's in? Meredith laughed and walked away from the group. Couple people went too. I joined them. Guys, this is not over. We still have a lot to cover. Nobody knows how to operate the inflatable raft. One boy lifted off his shirt and hopped into the lake. We all followed. It's weird to imagine a party without alcohol these days. We held a round-robin tournament of chicken fights. We swam races. Some of the girls lounged on the dirt beach and tried to catch a tan. Truthfully, it was the most fun I have ever had on a camping trip. When we went to bed that night, I thought, for once, maybe this year would be the first time I had a good time. I was wrong. Adam held true to his word about the separate bunks. 8 people for 8 cabins. The 9th would stay unoccupied until the campers arrived the next morning. Each counselor was required to stay inside from sunup to sundown, no exception, save for opportunities to relieve themselves in the porta potty. Adam called it proper training for the real thing. The dickhead actually promised to send people home if he caught them out for any reason. Most people muttered under their breath about it, but nobody complained outright. I, on the other hand, had one thing on my mind: the cigarettes. The cancer sticks had become a shameful and incessant habit at that point in my life. Call it teenage rebellion or general angst or a wealth of bad decisions that I have since grown from. But in the mid to late 90s, I could be an absolute asshole without my nicotine fix. The thought had consumed my mind the whole afternoon. I needed to get them back. Adam stayed up late by the fire. I heard and smelt the crackle of flames drifting in through my open window well past midnight. My skin itched and my gums ached uncomfortably as 12 turned lazily into 1 and 1:30. Finally, sometime around 2, I heard the welcoming sound of cold water squelching the fire. His heavy boots retreated to cabin 1. The lights went out. I waited for another 10 minutes. Then I slipped outside. The woods had a creepy sort of afterglow that night. The moon must have been full, but banks of rolling fog on the lake obscured and blocked its light, making it near impossible to see. I soon found myself reaching out with arms in front, guiding myself through the close-knit trees, reaching for the freedom of the stupid parking lot. I found it after 20 minutes search. A dim streetlight overhead illuminated the spot like a video game. I walked over to the garbage can, moved the expectant candy wrapper, and found the green pack of menthols sitting exactly where I left them. Jackpot. Within seconds, I pulled the thin wrapped tobacco out, sparked it, inhaled, and let the warm rush of relaxation wash over me. The itch on my arms started to fade away. My head suddenly felt airy and alleviated, the way it always did after a long gap in smoking. The day's troubles melted behind the burning paper and chemicals. I looked around as a warm breeze brought a flutter through the trees. I appreciated the beauty of the place for the first time. The lake sparkled and shone through the gaps in leaves and swaying branches. Bits of still flowing raindrops glanced off leaves and formed puddles in the lightly paved street. Even the mist started to lift a bit. Only one thing seemed out of place. A blue shape to my right, 30 yards through the trees. Out of nowhere, a flashlight turned on, right by that area. The shock of that light made my heart thump through my chest. Shit. Hello, I called out. Adam, I just had to take a piss, man. I went for a walk. Nobody answered. Adam, you out there? Nothing. I dipped into the pockets of my baggy jeans and pulled out my own flashlight. The stupid thing took a minute to kick on. I had to smack it a couple times and switch the batteries. After it finally turned on, I shined the beam right in the direction of the incoming light. Seemingly in reply, my partner in the distance went dark. To be honest, I didn't really expect anything sinister. I thought it could be Meredith or one of the other counselors fucking with me, or maybe Jared and his cronies. I checked my flashlight again and dipped it through the trees. I called out in my most intimidating voice, but the hint of blue stayed absolutely still in the exact same spot. Nobody replied. I waited a couple minutes. Then I ditched the smoldering cig under my boot, lit another, and walked back towards the campgrounds with a quickened pace. Something followed me. I couldn't see it, but I could hear the rustling in the trees. Couldn't be the wind. Something loud moved a particularly heavy branch to the left, which caused it to recoil to the right and smack into another tree. My nerves finally started to agitate. I felt the hairs on my neck stand up. This isn't fucking funny, I yelled with false confidence. And then somebody started to moan. Look, I know this sounds fucking bizarre, but this is what happened. It was a human, male voice. There was nothing supernatural to it whatsoever. That moan told me one simple fact. Sitting 20 yards away behind a bush, a man in a blue sweatshirt was watching me and getting off in the middle of the woods. And so I ran. I sprinted so fucking fast that I did not care if anybody heard me. I did not bother to look around or behind. I could still hear the guy following me. A flash of blue showed up in my peripherals just before I dove into the center of the campsite and slammed my body up against Adam's door. Adam, get the fuck out here. Right now, I screamed. Adam, this is an emergency. Wake the fuck up. I turned around and looked wildly into the woods. Nobody was there. Adam answered the door in his boxer shorts. Is that you, Gelman? I can't see anything. Somebody took my glasses. I quickly tried to explain everything that just happened. Minus the cigarettes. Bullshit, you went for a walk. All right, calm down. Where did you see him? I pointed to the winding path that led to the parking lot and kept blabbering. Adam walked right by me. Did you leave your jacket by cabin 9? He asked. I shook my head. Adam pointed groggily to the last cabin on the premises. What's that? Sitting just outside the door handle was a light blue sweatshirt. I checked my watch. 3 a.m. The kids arrived at 8. 3:15 in the morning. Adam gathered the camp counselors around the lit fire pit. He waited and tapped his heel for a moment while the groggy lot assembled in a line. We must have looked like soldiers awaiting orders, because he marched back and forth in front of us, with the blue sweatshirt raised idiotically over his head, kind of like a flag. All right, whose fucking sweatshirt is this? Crickets. Gelman says the owner of this sweatshirt followed him through the woods, and somebody took my fucking glasses from my nightstand. So let's end this right here and now so everyone can get some much-needed sleep. I'll repeat the question. Who did it? We had counted the group a moment earlier. All 8 counselors stood in place awkwardly. Jared? Is this yours? The obnoxious bully shifted uncomfortably. He seemed offended at the accusation. No, man, I was sleeping. Adam nodded and cut him off with a hand gesture. Melee? Jared's tough-looking friend shook his head solemnly. Meredith? Is this your shitty attempt at flirting? I never even noticed the short little brunette standing to my right. No, that thing is 5 sizes too big, she snickered. Adam went through the rest of the group with the same personal accusations. He questioned their bathroom habits, whether they saw anything, whether they heard anything. He seemed to become more and more freaked out the further he went down the line. Nobody noticed a thing. Every single person claimed to be sleeping. We were left with the blue sweatshirt and nothing else. All right then, since this belongs to nobody, you won't mind if I do this. Adam tossed the blue sweatshirt in the fire, lit some matches, and set it ablaze. Idiot! That could have been evidence. Meredith began. Evidence of what? A spooky encounter in the woods? He countered. We'll set a watch. It's the only thing we can do at this time of night. I started to argue, but it quickly became evident there was not much of a point. And so we all stood and stared as the last trace of intruder disappeared into the wind. Melee, Adam, and another counselor named Hannah agreed to stay up by the campfire until daylight. I didn't get much sleep, but the lock on my cabin door and windows and the idiots outside did help to make me feel a bit more safe. Maybe somebody just pranked me. 7 a.m. Adam phoned the park rangers to report the encounter and possible stolen property. They agreed to perform a grid search. Those same rangers did not deem it necessary to shut down the camp at the time. Maybe they should have. Hindsight is 2020. 8 a.m. The kids started to stream in like a waterfall. Most of them did not want to leave their families. I think that fact haunts me more than any other. We weren't prepared. Most of the counselors did not think the park would even stay open. And here we were, accepting check-ins for dozens of screaming children and frantic parents on minimal sleep. Therefore, the day's activities started out with a bit of a hitch. The parents departed altogether sometime around 9. The park rangers stopped by the camp and did a quick search around 10. They left at 11. By 11:30, I had just finished my first rotation on the inflatable raft. I must have looked like a drowned rat when I passed by Meredith working arts and crafts, if you could call it that. Most of the decorations were scattered through the grass. Only one small girl seemed interested in them. Meredith instead held an acoustic guitar, with the strap placed neatly around her slim shoulders, and the bass perched neatly on her slanted knee. She looked at me and smiled as she strummed it lazily and soulfully sang the words to an old favorite song of mine. Well, sometimes I go out by myself, and I look across the water, and I think of all the things what you're doing, and in my head I paint a picture. I stared in all of my awkward, gangling glory. Shit. What do you say to that? I think in that moment I fell in love for the first time. My face turned red. The kids around Meredith started to giggle and point. I laughed and danced away like the awkward asshole I still am today. 11:45. I was on my way to cabin 8 to change into dry clothes and get ready for lunch when I overheard Adam talking to the park rangers. They must have came back. The kid is not lying. The other counselors don't take us seriously, but I believe him. There was someone out there last night. A radio cackled with the usual monotone dispatcher. The taller ranger rushed to silence it. Okay, we searched the grid, we checked around the camp, found nothing else suspicious. Would have been great if you kept that sweatshirt. I don't know why you would burn it, but we'll have somebody out here tonight to keep an eye on things, just in case. Okay, kid? Definitely make sure to phone your boss about the incident as well. Okay, thank you, officer. I retreated back inside my cabin and changed for volleyball. 8 p.m. After a day of rotating through activities, wrangling a group of 10 or more mischievous children, and all the while entertaining the thought of a crazy person in the woods, I was exhausted. The entire group was once again gathered around the fireplace. A few of the campers, oblivious to last night's predicament, had asked Meredith to perform after they heard her song from earlier, and so I sat, transfixed to her beautiful and colorful voice, until sometime well past 9. Then Adam got up from his nap and ordered bedtime. I herded my batch of 10 children towards cabin 8. Most seemed just as tired as me. Some still wanted to go home. Some just wanted to sleep in their beds. I told them to write letters to their parents in the morning instead. The counselors met earlier in the day and drew straws for that night's watch. Marcus and Hannah got 9 to 12. Jared and Meredith 12 to 3. And finally, Kumar and Josie had the graveyard shift from 3 to 6. I went to bed with an aching in my stomach and a gnaw in my gums from the lack of nicotine. But again, I felt safe with the idea that somebody would be watching for me. 1:30 a.m. I woke up to a tapping on the glass window by my bed. My vision was blurry. I reached for the familiar shape of my glasses on the nightstand. They were gone. The wrapping on the glass stayed quiet but insistent. It seemed like the tapper knew enough to know I slept at the front of the cabin, so I assumed it to be Meredith and squinted in the vague direction of her shape. "What's going on?" I asked in my best inside voice. Come see," the voice said in return. Come see." The footsteps retreated. I threw on my jacket in a panic and did my best not to wake the other kids in the cabin. A couple of them squinted at me distractedly before rolling over, but none of them got up. I opened the door to find a completely empty camp. 2 chairs sat propped by the fire pit. They were empty. The fire still burned on as expected, but there was nobody there to tend it. Shit, it's embarrassing to admit now, but my mind immediately went to the gutter. I thought maybe Jared had worked his jock charm on Meredith and won her over. Maybe they snuck off somewhere to hook up. Maybe they found the new hiding spot for my cigs and smoked them all. My depression turned to anger as another possibility crept into the back of my mind. Maybe she didn't want to go with him. Maybe this whole thing was caused by Jared all along. I darted towards her cabin, number 7, and knocked on the door as quietly as possible. Nobody answered. I tugged the handle and found it unsurprisingly unlocked. I was greeted by a gaggle of blurry children. They all immediately shouted a million explanations in my direction. Miss Meredith left and never came back. She was supposed to be watching the fire. She took my glasses. Michael went with her to the bathroom. He was scared to go alone. We heard noises. Yeah, I heard somebody moaning. Somebody was definitely moaning. Like this, ow. I tried to tell the kids to calm down as they bombarded me with 1,000 crazy questions. Where did you hear this? Tell me where. A few of them pointed nervously. Where? Guys, where? A particularly brave 10-year-old boy named Martin pushed himself to the front. They went in cabin 9. 2 a.m. Time to wake up Adam. 2:15 in the morning. Adam and I stood in front of the door to cabin 9. Waves of heavy rain started to drift in through the trees. I told him everything the campers told me. About the moaning in the woods, about the missing children, and the missing counselors. I told him one kid saw someone go inside this very cabin. I could tell he was scared. His arms and legs trembled together so nervously I thought they might collapse or start a band. I didn't mind it. Then, in that moment, I was scared too. My campers in cabin 8 scampered up their beds to watch us from the windows inside. I gestured angrily to get down and out of sight. "What's the plan, Adam?" I asked distractedly. He stared back with wide and blank eyes. "I'm thinking. We don't have time for that, man. There's kids missing. I really think something is going on here." He winced. "Asterisk, you don't think I know that, Gelman? Let me fucking think, please." The crack in his voice made me uncomfortable. Until that point, Adam was the figure of authority. He was the guy to go to if you had a problem. Now, here he was, shaking in his overpriced boots and barely able to grip the door handle in front of him. "Is anybody in there?" he announced. "I'm coming in." Adam took a deep breath. Then, with one smooth motion, he turned the handle to cabin 9 and waltzed inside. The first thing to greet us was the overwhelming stench of rot. It was as if the door had created an airlock for the horrible smells inside. A sickening sweet tone drifted through it, like cheap perfume, shittily covering up an old butcher shop. It overwhelmed me. The odor reached into my nostrils and trickled down into my stomach. I leaned back outside to vomit. Adam quickly followed suit. Then panic overwhelmed the 23-year-old like a virus. "There's a dead body in there." Adam sniffled. "I know it. I fucking know it, man. I'm not going to look at a dead body. I can't do it, Max, I can't." He stared at me pleadingly with a sweat-stained brow and snot dribbling down his nose. "What do we do?" Tears started to well up in his eyes. I hated him then. I hated everything about him. He looked pathetic. We needed a leader in that moment. We needed direction. We needed guidance. And all we got was a stupid fucking kid. I didn't know any better. I didn't know what we should do. I never did. I'm sorry, but the bitterness sticks with you more than anything else. "Keep your voice down," I mouthed. "You want the campers to hear you?" He shook his head silently. We have to look. It'll be quick. Let's go. I walked back into cabin 9 and surveyed the chaos. Adam followed suit sheepishly. 10 different bunk beds lined the sides. Nothing about that seemed unordinary, but the fact that every single one sat adorned with twisted sets of sheets and dirty pillows creeped me right the fuck out. And the filthy clothes on the floor suggested something far more sinister. Somebody has been living here? I whispered in disgust. Did you check this fucking room before people got here? Adam shrugged despondently as his wide eyes surveyed the scenery. No, supposed to be empty. Unbelievable. Took me a moment for my weak eyes to adjust. There were no lights in cabin 9. The moonlight through the open door did all that it could. I went to check the beds before Adam's weak voice whispered like a child's. Look, man. Glasses. I followed the direction of Adam's outstretched finger. Sure enough, sitting on a desk in the back corner were a neat row of eyeglasses. 5 in each row. 3 rows. We need to call the park rangers. I started. He stared back at me. Adam, do you hear me? We need to call the rangers. Okay. Go do it now. Okay. He shuffled aimlessly for the door. I could not blame the guy for his reaction, and I cannot fathom the guilt that sits over his head to this day. I feel bad ragging on him here, but it needed to be said. This is my story, after all, he can tell his. There was one more mystery left to solve in cabin 9. The smell. The bulges under the covers of 3 beds gave me an unsettling inkling. I approached one of the bunks slowly. Part of me expected a counselor to pop out and claim the whole thing as a prank. Part of me expected to find a bullied kid who snuck away from the group. Most of me expected everything but the reality of my situation. Sitting under the sheets was the mutilated body of a 13-year-old girl. She didn't have any eyes left, but she still wore glasses. My glasses. 2:30 in the morning. Some people say dead bodies look peaceful. I've heard it before in a few Hollywood films and television shows. They're just sleeping and the like. They're wrong. They're all wrong. Amelia's face turned blue. Scars and scratches covered her neck. She still had bits of skin in her fingernails. The blonde hair that I recognized in magnificent curls to start the day was tangled, matted and mixed with oddly colored bloodstains and raw lake water. I reached out to check her wrist for a pulse. Her skin was still wet, but horribly cold. Colder than any human being I've touched before or since. I looked around the room one more time. 2 more shapes sat in consecutive beds to my right. One was a lot bigger than the other. I wondered who they were while fighting the urge to retch. I knew someone would have to check, but I didn't have to wonder much longer. Somebody screamed, and the whole camp came alive. 2:35. I closed the door behind me to a welcoming clean breeze of fresh air. Adam was by the fire pit whispering urgently into his phone. The kids were all awake, now, huddled by the windows of their cabins and looking outside for the source of the screams. Adam paused and looked towards me hopefully. He seemed absolutely oblivious to the chaos around him. I shook my head. Suddenly, half-dressed campers toppled out of their cabins like it was the 4th of fucking July. Their chattered and excited voices erased all of the essence of the horror I just witnessed. I had to stop and grab a couple just to move them out of the way. I felt like a running back in the middle of a sea of zombies. Maybe that doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. It's the way I remember it. Shock can do that to a guy. The counselors rubbed their eyes and shouted questions at me through the chatter of their tiny little voices. What the fuck, Max? Who is screaming? What do we do? Everyone looked towards Adam for instruction. He hesitated. Then he put his hand over his ear, turned around, and yelled something stupid back into the phone. Fuck. Keep everyone away from cabin 9. No one goes in, I yelled. Melee, come with me. 2:40 in the morning. Have you ever yelled across a lake? Voices have an awkward way of traveling across flat water. Sometimes, if there is nothing to obstruct the sound, someone that's actually very far away can sound very close by. Meredith and her abductor sounded like they had to be within the campgrounds. We were sure of it, but by the time we arrived, they were actually quite far away. 200 yards to be exact. directly across from us on the opposing waterfront. Meredith was in the water, but mostly under the water. Her twisted body bobbed up and down like a tiny little rag doll. Her gasping voice came in breaths of heaving anguish that dipped in and out like a skipping record player. She tried to scream for help, from someone, anyone, but nobody was there to give it. Her voice became weaker and weaker. Her limbs started to thrash less. Then, as suddenly as it started, peace. The man that held her was enormous and relentless. He looked straight ahead the whole time. I couldn't see much, so sometimes I wonder if he was looking at me. Sometimes I know he was looking at me. Melee started to swim. I knew enough to know there was not much of a point. Meredith died at exactly 2:44 in the morning, by my best guess. Her body sunk to the bottom of Lake Owanta like a lead weight. Her killer disappeared behind the treeline before Melee even made it halfway across the lake. 2:30 p.m. January 10th. A long time later. Have you ever noticed that some of society's most fucked up individuals are referred to by 3 names? Mark David Chapman, John Wayne Gacy, James Earl Ray, Lee Harvey Oswald, John Wilkes Booth. You get the picture. The man who murdered my friend and 2 innocent campers had 3 names, too. But I won't give that shithead the post-mortem satisfaction of listing one of them. So let's just call him the Devil. The Devil was charged with first-degree murder of his mother in the spring of 1984. He escaped from a nearby prison in the summer. He was never found. For years and years, he was never found. The reason for his elusiveness seemed to stem from an extensive knowledge of the wilderness. You see, the Devil was raised by his mother, a blind woman of advanced age, in the woods of the Northwest Territories. He murdered her after an argument on his 40th birthday. Some say he cut out her eyes too after he died. Some say he wanted to cure her by transplant. But that's all conjecture, I think. The police report says she died of blood loss. The investigating officers believed the Devil returned to Canada after his escape. They even had several leads which pointed in that direction, including bus passes, sightings, and credit card charges. Nobody thought he would be crafty enough to hide 50 miles away. As the years dragged on, interest in the case faded away. The remaining investigators shifted their focus elsewhere. And so the killer stumbled onto our humble little campsite, 50 miles away from the prison. It is impossible to say whether he watched us before. I think about that a lot. Whether he knew me or stalked me as a young camper of 13 and 14. Whether he watched the thousands of kids that passed through that camp during that time period. The park rangers found a makeshift home located several yards behind the parking lot. It did not look permanent. Cabin 9 could not have been occupied a month prior, during maintenance season. They believe he moved around a lot to stay off the grid. They believe paranoia alone kept him alive. I'm not as convinced, but that doesn't really matter. The Devil passed away that same night. He was never apprehended while alive. He died the same way he lived. Alone in the woods, wrists slit, and eyes cut out by a rusted knife. So there you have it. The names are somewhat changed. The dates are mostly rearranged. But the story remains the same. I, Max Gelman, survived the Sleepaway Camp Massacre. So when you're alone tonight, and looking to unwind, sing yourself a sad song for Meredith. Something soulful and smoky, like she would have liked. Maybe even something with a corny little rhyme. Her name is the one that should be kept alive.